Hi there grade 12 CAT learners, and welcome to today's video where we are looking at preparing you for your theory final paper. Now you're probably excited about this because this is the very last time that you're going to be writing CAT.
Eventually.
No more theory CAT after this. I know some of you are going to be very glad about that. But in this video, what I'm going to be focusing on is a lot of feedback that I got from friends of mine that provide me with markers reports for the last 2 years. So I'm going to be looking at some of the feedback that came from the markers centers in 2019 and then 2020 as well, so that they identify certain problem areas and it helps you in the end when it comes to hitting your paper. So let's look at what they had to say in 2019. As per usual, the first two questions that usually come up are multiple choice questions and true and false questions. And most of the multiple choice questions, both in 2019 and 2020, were fairly well answered. Now, please remember, when it comes to multiple choice, I usually advise people, look at the 4 options, eliminate the 2 that look, it cannot be this answer. There is no way that it's this answer, but how are you going to know that? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to be looking at the question itself. Read the question, try to understand what they are asking of you before you even look at the options. Because once you understand what they are looking for, well, then you know which option to go for. So understand the question, eliminate the 2 that it's not, and then you are sitting with a 50-50 between the other 2. Then the infamous true and false. Now, this happens every single year. This is why we bring it up. With true and false, remember, if an answer is true, it is true. You don't have to justify it. However, if it's false, please read the question, because they might tell you to replace a word in the phrase to make it true because the statement is false, or they'll tell you or ask you, well, if it's false, you need to substantiate the answer. Give a reason why it's actually false, or replace the word, something like that. So please, when it comes to true and false, if it's true, it's true. If it's false, you have to say why, okay? And they'll give you the instruction for that. The information processing cycle was another area of concern. Remember, our information processing cycle, there's a vast amount of marks that can actually come from this. Why? Because our information processing cycle is not just the steps, but it's the explanation and it's the examples of this. So for example, we have input, processing, storage, output, and communication. So those are our 5 information processing cycle steps. But for each one of them, we can give physical examples. Input, we can give a keyboard as an example. Storage, our hard drive. Processing, our CPU. Communication, our internet, email, all those things. And then we haven't even explained it yet. So for our information processing cycle, remember, for each one of those steps, you can name the step. You must understand how to explain the step and give an example. So if you're looking at 5 of them, and you're looking at 3 items each, you're looking at a possible 15 marks. Not that they're going to ask you that, but you need to understand all of that as well. That was an area of concern in 2019. They also did mention, again, the fact that you need to read the questions in order to understand what is being asked of you. I did mention this earlier, but it was something that was actually noted very boldly in 2019, and it's come through in 2020 as well. Many learners are not reading the questions in order to understand what is expected of them. Then we've got 3D printing. So with printers in general, we're not looking at the dot matrix printers, those old ones anymore. We're mainly looking at your laser, inkjet, and your 3D printers. So with 3D printers, please understand how they work, understand what they can be used for, and how they can help people. So I know in the Prelim paper this year, in September, they spoke about drones. And they asked, well, how can a 3D printer actually help you with this? Well, the 3D printer I can use that to actually print parts for my drone. How does that help me? I save on money because I don't have to go and order parts from somewhere else. Whatever I need, I can actually physically print and use on my drone. So I can even customize it to what I need. Convergence and green computing was another one. So remember, convergence, this is the coming together of different technologies into one device. For example, your smartphone. It's got a number of different technologies in one physical device. Green computing is another one, and we know that is computing or using computers in a way that benefits the environment. So that screen at the back there, that one, yes. When I'm not using it, I should be switching it off. When it comes to my printers, I'm going to refill my printers refilling the ink and toner instead of just throwing the cartridge away. I'm going to recycle equipment instead of just chucking it in the bin. Okay, so those are ways of benefiting the environment when I'm using my computers. Another one was the difference between a network and the internet. Now, a network, please remember, that definition comprises of three things. Number one, it is two or more computing devices. That's the first step. Number two, connected through some sort of media. That could be cable, it could be wireless. And number three, for the purpose of sharing information. So when you define a network, remember it's three things: two or more computing devices connected through some sort of media for the purpose of sharing information. Now the internet, on the other hand, is a global network of computers that are also connected together for the purpose of sharing information. But this is a network on a global scale, and this is actually a whole lot of networks around the world that are linked together. Another one that came up was the difference between a browser, a home page, and a website. Okay, so the browser, don't tell me it's Google, because it's not. Okay, it's Google Chrome. Google Chrome is a piece of software. So when we think of a web browser, we need to remember it is a piece of software that allows us to navigate through the internet. Our home page, however, this is the home page of a website. So maybe let's just go to a website. Well, a website is a collection of related web pages under a single domain name. So like Facebook.com has a number of different web pages that are related under that one name. Okay, so that's a website. Our home page is then the first page, the default page, we can say the introductory page when we go to that site. So when I go to Facebook.com, the very first page that comes up, that is my home page. When I go to Gumtree, the first page that comes up, that's my introductory page, my startup page, that is my home page. Another few areas included things like graphs, how to interpret a graph, especially on the axis and legend they mentioned. Plagiarism as well. Okay, what is plagiarism? This is taking somebody else's ideas or thoughts and making it your own. So you go to Google, you go and find information, you copy it and you paste it and you pass it off as if it's your own, but we know it's not. Okay, so you've committed plagiarism, taking somebody else's ideas, their article, all those things, and making it seem as if it's your own. Then when it comes to social implications, there was one that they highlighted that was a bit of a problem, and that was how to protect yourself on social media, because they were saying that most people just indicate, well, let's just change the password, but we know it's not just the password. You need to log out of devices. Okay, when you in your Facebook app, when you finish going through Facebook, log out of it, because the next person that goes on your phone, let's say your brother, your mother takes it or something like that, and they click on Facebook, what's going to happen? It's going to go into the app because you've already logged in and you didn't log out. When you're on other PCs, you need to do the same. So yes, you can change the password, but you do want to log out. You want to use a secure password as well. You also want to make sure that the browser you are using is secure. You want to make sure that you've got privacy settings correctly set up, on your social media accounts, things like that. So those are just a couple of ways that you can keep yourself safe. Okay, then the one term that came up was big data. Now we know data is raw facts. Okay, so that's just like my cell phone, my name, that's just data. Once I process it, it then turns into information. So if I take it and I put it together and create a profile of someone, I've now turned that into information, and that is now meaningful and useful. So I want to give you three different definitions of big data. So I'm trying to give you the simplest explanation. So it's basically a set of technologies created to store, analyze, and manage bulk data. For example, discovering consumer shopping habits, working out personalized marketing. Okay, it's massive. When we talk about big data, we're talking about massive amounts of data sets. So not just looking at your name and surname, but looking at, let's say, different schools, bringing all of that data together across the country, right? So let's say we've got to put all the data together, all the names and surnames of the learners for the entire Eastern Cape. That becomes big data. So again, it's a set of technologies created to store, analyze, and manage bulk data. So things like your social media sites, your stock exchanges, they all make use of big data. Also remember, there's a difference between data and data. There's data, meaning raw facts, and remember there's also data for your airtime. So just read the question carefully. We don't want you to misinterpret when they use the term data. Another one that comes up is troubleshooting. So they give you scenarios. They tell you, listen, on that PC at the back there, the keyboard stopped working. What can we do to solve that problem? Well, you can do a couple of things. Check that the keyboard is plugged in. Sounds stupid, but yes. Check that it's plugged into the correct port. Try to plug it into a different port. Try to plug it into a different PC to see if it's the keyboard or if it's the actual PC. Okay, those are just some troubleshooting techniques, but those are the things that they are looking for. When it comes to your wireless mouse and your wired keyboard, those sort of things, those differences between them. You could have the keyboard stolen if it's a wireless keyboard. You could have the transmitter being misplaced, anything like that. Then I also mentioned obviously your normal things like malware, our malicious software dealing with viruses, trojans, worms, all of those. A lot of people lost out marks when it came to scenarios around the PC specs. So looking at things like, a PC has this amount of RAM, it's got like 4 gigs of RAM, it's got a 512 hard drive, it's got this graphics card, it's using this particular CPU, and asking you questions related to those items. A lot of people didn't understand what was going on and how to actually extract certain information from there. So please go through the PC spec list, go and Google one, have a look at what they are actually asking you there, or the information they're providing to you, and try to understand what they are saying, right? What does it mean when you see these things? And then lastly, last term that gave people a bit of uphill for 2019 was grid computing. So you've seen this term before, you've heard this term before. What is it? When we talk about grid computing, we're looking at a group of networked computers, and I want to get this definition right for you. Networked computers which work together as a virtual supercomputer to perform large tasks. So we look at things like weather patterns, things like that, which uses a large amount of data. So we're taking different computers, we are networking them so that they can work together as one massive computer to perform large tasks. So 2020 started off by highlighting the fact that people need to use the correct wording when they are giving an answer. So they say answers like cheaper, faster, and easier are not going to be accepted anymore. So you can't just say, oh, well, this one is faster, this one is cheaper. No, you need to use different wording. And you can see, I've said this before, they are leaning towards more textbook orientated wording. So please, language usage is going to be very important and can unfortunately cost you some marks. One of the terms that came up that a lot of people didn't know was safe mode. So what is safe mode? For those of us who use computers quite a lot and have done some of the technical things behind it, safe mode is basically the process of switching on your computer and choosing this mode. So what does this safe mode do? Well, it allows you to go into Windows, but it will only load the most essential components for Windows to work. So it's not going to load things like your graphics drivers and all this. It's going to look a bit weird, but you'll still be able to go into your PC and maybe go and take your data off or whatever you are looking to do. But it only loads the most essential components that's needed. Then we have things like the task scheduler and task manager. So obviously your task scheduler means that you are scheduling tasks. You are setting a particular time for the PC to perform maybe a disk defragmentation, maybe for the PC to do a disk cleanup, anything like that. But that schedules certain tasks. Your task manager, however, comes up with your Control Alt and Delete, and that can force programs to close. Especially when a program is not responding, you can use your task manager to forcibly close that particular program. And then they also mentioned about browser plugins. Okay, so your browser plugins are it's basically software that is added. So sometimes they might call them add-ons, and this gives an extra feature to your web browser. So let's say, for example, you open your web browser, you go to a particular site, and it tells you that you need this particular plugin to watch this video. When you go and download that, it installs that extra piece of software. It adds that feature now onto your browser and allows your browser to be able to play that particular video. Right, they also mentioned about cloud storage, which at its core is just storing files online. So when we talk about the cloud, we're talking about the internet. Just remember, it's not just some cloud up in the sky. No, it's the internet, which means it's stored on a computer somewhere else, on a server somewhere else. So that's our cloud storage. There are going to be some theory questions based on your practical work as well. So one of the questions that came up that very few could answer was the circular reference in Excel. Like, what is a circular reference? Sometimes you're working in Excel, put in a couple of formulas, and you go out or you try and save it and it says, oh, circular reference error. And that simply means that whatever you've got in the formula, those references in the formula, it's referring to itself. That's why it's a circle. That's why they call it a circular reference, because a formula is directly or indirectly referring to its own cell. Okay, then they did mention things like MS Office error messages, your Excel error messages that you need to know. Also a couple of formulas. They use the term also a URL shortener. Now, when we think of URLs, we think of that long URL like, HTTPS :// and then www.facebook, all this type of thing. When you use a URL shortener, it's actually a site that allows you to put in the long URL and it gives you a shortened version. Now, we would use a shortened version if we want to, send people a link to a particular video, or you want to send them a link to something else that usually has, like a long URL, but you can use a URL shortener to do that. So I want to get the definition right for you. This is a website, number one, that reduces the length of the URL. End of story. Okay, then one that was quite interesting, the difference between USB and a flash drive. Now, people, please, please, when we talk about USB, we are referring to a universal serial bus, which is the port itself. So you can't say to me, I put a USB in my PC. No. When we talk about the USB, we're talking about the port on your computer itself. When we're talking about a flash drive, now we're talking about that external drive that utilizes the USB port to be able to work on the PC. So please just get your wording correct between USB and your flash drives. And then the last one they mentioned was, and this is for 2020, and I think this basically wraps up everything that we need to do, is the difference between AR and VR. So AR is your augmented reality. So I'm going to use your phone, for example. Your phone, some of you use Snapchat. You can, be looking at your face here, and on the phone you can add, things like bunny ears and make yourself look like a monster, and all these different things. That is adding to the real picture that's there. That's why it's called augmented reality. I'm going to get another definition for you. They say augmented reality adds digital elements to a live view, often used by a camera or smartphone. Some of you might know Pokemon Go. So Pokemon Go, you could take your phone, open the app, and it would, show everything as you would normally see it on your phone. And as you look like around the street in your neighborhood, you would then see things pop up onto the screen. Okay, that's augmented reality. Virtual reality is something completely different. This is where you are immersed. You are totally in a whole other reality. This is where you get in your VR headset, you're putting it on, and you're seeing a totally different environment that you are immersed in. And this can be a variety of things. So it is, number one, an artificial environment. It is a computer-generated environment with scenes and objects that appear to be real. Okay, this can be used for things like pilot training, driver training. I know some people have actually created whole environments where they can walk through buildings and walk through different sort of architecture and things like that. But just understand the difference between augmented reality, and with that all you need is your phone. But with virtual reality, you might need a virtual reality headset, you might need some earphones, things like that. So just understand the difference between the two. And grade 12s, that's it for our first video. I've got a second video coming out where I'm going to go through an exam paper as well, some more tips and things that I'm going to give you. But this is video number 1 in preparing you to take on your last, because you're all going to pass, your very last theory paper. Okay. I've also, in the description, I've left a link This is for the CAT terms for 2021. So it's a long PDF, but it's got every single term you can think of within CAT. And I just want to say thank you to everyone, the other teachers from other areas as well, who provided me with a lot of this info. And again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and just share this with everyone so that all the CAT learners can do their absolute best, pass, and never have to see this again. Okay, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in video number 2.